Good morning and welcome to our Sassy and Sold podcast. And today's special guest is Cassandra Cassidy. So welcome.
Thank you.
Cassandra, can you briefly introduce yourself and explain what a mortgage broker is?
Yeah, so I operate the Premier Mortgage Center franchise here in Walkerton. I've been in the industry for almost 21 years.
Oh.
I know, how is that possible considering I'm 25? I get that all the time. I absolutely love what I do as a mortgage broker. And my elevator pitch to people, I could talk forever about what I do. It's a never ending task, but my elevator pitch is this. We shop our clients' mortgages out for them. We deal with some of those major financial institutions that you're well aware of, but I have about 75 other ones that people have never heard of. So we take a look around, see who has the best interest rate and the best package suited to them. If you go to your bank, they have a couple little bubbles that they try to cram you into, where I have thousands of bubbles that we can fit people into that more so are molded for them, their particular needs. Because we go downtown Toronto to the head companies, wiping out that local branch, we're often able to get lower interest rates than what your own bank can even offer you. A lot of people think that mortgage brokers also charge fees. In rare circumstances, we will if it's a private type of mortgage, but 9 times out of 10, we get paid directly from the lender too. So there's no cost for our services. There, wow. I got you from like floor 1 to floor 8 with what we do. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did not know that. Okay, second question is how early in the home buying process should someone talk to a mortgage broker?
As soon as they have it in their brain that they want to buy a house. As soon as they're sitting there going, hey, I think home ownership is for me, that's when they need to start talking to a mortgage broker.
When we pre-qualify with our questions to a potential buyer, first question, have you been pre-approved?
Exactly.
One of the first questions.
Yeah.
Have you been pre-approved?
Yeah.
You've not? Okay, go do that before we start looking.
Absolutely. You don't want to waste anybody's time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, or they get their hopes up thinking they can reach this, but they can only reach this.
Or the other way around.
Yeah.
It's a pleasant surprise sometimes if you're showing people some homes that they think they can only qualify for $350,000. Turns out they can do $450,000.
Yeah.
So hey, bigger bang for your buck there by having that pre-approval.
That's right. Okay, well, you kind of already touched on this, but what's the difference between going to a mortgage broker versus a bank?
Yeah.
Yeah, reiterating the fact that we're able to often get lower interest rates, finding a mortgage product that's suitable to that particular person instead of fitting into that bubble. But we take it up a notch. I hold everybody's hand, sometimes literally, throughout the whole home buying process, step by step, get them there, take care of all the stuff they don't want to take care of, dealing with their real estate agent. Dealing with their parents, dealing with the lawyers, the home inspectors. So we try to take a lot of that burden on for them to try to make the process go as smooth as possible. It's a big deal. People get stressed out, and I often do tell people, look, you're going to wake up at 2 a.m. feeling like you're going to throw up. That's okay, and that's completely normal. This is a big life big step for people in their lives, and it should be taken seriously, and it's often super stressful. So we try to calm them down, get them to the end all in one piece. And I do tell people, look, I'll do everything you need me to do except for help you pack. The only thing I will carry in the form of a box is maybe a case of beer to your doorstep on the day of closing, but we'll get you there to the end and try to make it even a fun process.
You're a lot like us too, because how often are people texting you at 10 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
Or 7 in the morning. Yeah, we've done it. I was just saying, you were in Mexico one time, and I'm texting you, and you're answering me, and you're on holidays, but yet we were, working on a deal.
Yeah,
together.
it's important. This is
Not that
people's
you
livelihood.
necessarily-
This is the biggest step in their life, a big financial burden, but their biggest asset at the same time.
Yeah,
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what exactly is a pre-approval then? How long does it last?
Yeah, so a pre-approval is basically, really honestly, it's a piece of paper that the interest rate's guaranteed for 120 days. It's great to have this piece of paper because if interest rates should rise, you have something secured. Again, we do take it up to the next level, and we look at everything at Premier Mortgage Center. We're going to check the income out. We're going to check the credit out. We're going to discuss, property types with our clients to make sure that they're fully equipped when their time comes to put an offer in, that pre-approval will convert into a full actual approval.
Right. That's good. So what kind of documents does a buyer need to provide you with
Oh,
to get
yeah.
approved? I know there's tons, right?
Paperwork, like
Yeah.
paperwork. So if you're a regular employee, usually we will ask for a current pay stub, 2 years T4s, and an employment letter to confirm that you're still working. If you're self-employed, that's when we're going to ask for income tax returns, a notice of assessments, articles of incorporation, business financials, and sometimes I'll throw in the blood of a sacrificial lamb,
Right.
just for giggles, because there's a lot in there and it can seem overwhelming to people, but there is a reason behind that. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I guess for myself, we're asking how much weight does a pre-approval hold when you're making an offer? And I know once I have talked to a client, are you pre-approved? Yeah. The other agent on the other end, when I'm submitting an offer, first question, are they pre-approved? Right? So it does hold a ton of weight.
It does. And I think that everybody is different. Other mortgage brokers operate differently. Banks operate differently. I can only speak for myself and how a pre-approval is super important because we do look at everything ahead of time. It does allow the buyer to show that seller that they're serious, though, that they've taken the appropriate steps before wasting anybody's time or looking at their house, that they know what they're up against. So it does mean a lot.
So what are the reasons that somebody may not be approved?
Yeah, not be approved?
Yeah.
To not get for
Pre-approved.
not to have a pre-approval.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that could prevent somebody from actually being pre-approved. It could be credit issues.
Yeah.
It could be being new at a job or maybe working just casually, not having a down payment. There's a lot of things that could prevent somebody
Or
from
credit
getting
history.
credit history is important.
Because I know first-time buyers, sometimes they don't have a
They
credit
don't
card.
have
They need to go get a credit card.
Yeah, go get a credit card.
It's odd, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah,
And
like you have one that'll pay cash for everything. But
or
no,
people
that
who pay
doesn't cut
rent.
the mustard. You need to,
People who pay rent for years,
Yeah.
who are paying so much money for rent, but rent's not reported on your credit report either. Your mortgage is, though, oddly. So I think we should lobby to the government and say, hey, look, if people are paying, $2,500 a month for rent and want to buy a house that's $1,500 a month, that should hold
that
some
makes
weight.
total sense.
Right? Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah. Okay.
Just back to the pre-approval. What is a reason if a buyer might lose that pre-approval?
Oh, yeah. If somebody was to change jobs all of a sudden, they might say, well, I'm going to be making more money, but you have a 6-month probation period. You might not have that job for that period of time. Or if somebody finances a new car and that loan payment now has to be disclosed. Things like that could make that pre-approval not valid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. The next section is interest rates. So what does it mean to lock in a rate?
I think people have a couple different opinions or thoughts as to what that might mean. Some people think that locking in a rate means being pre-approved, holding that interest rate for a period of time, while other people who may be in a variable rate mortgage, which fluctuates up and down, can convert that into a fixed rate so they have that steady payment moving forward. So to us, a locking in an interest rate would mean converting from a variable into a fixed.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then I think you mentioned this. So the question is, what happens if interest rates drop after a buyer locks in a rate?
Yeah, so if interest rates should fall, and I hope that they do, they have been consistently doing so, our policy is to have that interest rate automatically drop 10 days before closing. So I'm going to take a look back from the date that they were pre-approved or approved 10 days before closing and say, okay, have the rates come down during that portion of time. I'm paid on the loan amount, not on the interest rate. So it would do me no help. It would do them no service to keep that higher rate.
Right.
More money in a buyer's pocket and less in the bank's is always a better deal. So we will track that interest rate period and make sure that everybody has that lower rate should they go down.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's my
that's
favorite
great.
phone call to make.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I just saved you $130 this month. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Your bank will never call you and say, hey, rates went down. We're going to save you money. They're there to make the bank money,
Absolutely,
So that's another benefit of using a broker for sure.
Okay, and can buyers switch lenders after a rate is locked? And if so, are there any penalties?
There's no penalties. a pain in my butt. But yes, we do that quite frequently. Some banks will have a special promotion on that they say, if you fund your mortgage within 30 days, we're going to give you a discounted rate. So if I have somebody has 120 days and all of a sudden there's this really good promotion come on, we're out. We're bouncing. I'll give that lender an opportunity to try to keep that business. But it's ultimately what's best for the client. And as long as they're okay with doing some more paperwork, we can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
CMHC. Not a lot of people necessarily know what it is or what it's for or when it's required. You want to touch on that?
Sure. CMHC is the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. They're a default insurer. So what their purpose is to allow people to purchase a home with a minimal down payment, less than 20%. But this does put the lender at risk. Should that person fall into default, not make their mortgage payments, bounce to Mexico, and the bank has to sell the house, they may have to sell the house for more money than it's actually worth. So this default insurance will protect the lender, lets them sleep at night knowing if these people bounce, that their mortgage will be paid in full. If you have 20% down, you don't have to have CMHC. That 20% equity stake is what gives that lender that peace of mind. But CMHC, Canada Guarantee, and Sagen are three of the default insurers that we have access to. They do charge a premium based on how much you have down in the loan amount, but it's included in the mortgage. It's not out of pocket, which is nice.
And it's not a ton of money, is it?
Not really. If you have 5%, if you have 5% down, your CMHC premium's 4%. So, yeah, it is a little hefty, but it is also fully portable too. So if somebody should move and have less than 20% down, you can take that with you.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I think you answered about CMHC and how it protects the lender. You just answered that. And then what it means for the buyer. So is it CMHC that makes the house have to qualify as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right? So the bank's going to look at three main criteria. Can you afford it based on your debt servicing ratios? I won't bore you with that. The second thing they're going to look at is your credit history. Can you borrow and repay? And the third thing they're going to look at is the property itself. You can have oodles of money, wonderful job, excellent credit. But if you're buying a piece of crap that's leaning to the left, has holes in the walls, or whatever the case may be there, the bank doesn't necessarily want to have that on the books. So the bank has to be okay with it. And then CMHC also has to be okay with it.
Right. Okay. Right on.
Okay, down payments. When does the buyer pay the full down payment?
Usually the lawyer's office will ask for a certified check or money order a couple of days before closing. I need to show proof to the lender that the borrower has that down payment available in their bank account and it's ready to go, but the lawyer will ask for a check closer to closing, a couple days beforehand.
Okay. And now, what's the role of a co-signer, and when is one typically needed?
We are seeing a lot more people requiring co-signers these days. Jobs aren't paying that much. Property values are high. Interest rates are meh. We're there. So sometimes we'll ask for a family member to co-sign, just to get on that mortgage with that borrower to say, look, if they don't make the payments, we're here to vouch for them. We'll make sure that those mortgage payments will be made. So we do see that sometimes if somebody's in a probationary period at their work, or they have a lot of overtime, but they haven't had a chance to prove that it's consistent. So we just need that co-signer for typically only a couple of years until that borrower can qualify on their own, prove to the bank, look, let me show you that I can make these mortgage payments.
And you go through the same process with the co-signer.
The co-signer is
paperwork.
Co-signer has to give everything to me as well. They have to do a full application, a credit inquiry, their income documentation, all their financials as well.
So in the 2 years when you don't need that co-signer anymore, I guess you need the lawyer then to take them off title.
You do. It's usually only a few $100s though to have a lawyer do that. We're not affecting the mortgage. The mortgage is not being broken. We're not restructuring anything. So just need to go to the law office to say, hey, I'm willing to come off title without being paid anything. And obviously the lender needs to be okay with it too. So we have some paperwork we would have to fill out for that.
Okay. Okay, the next question then is, what is the risk and obligations for that co-signer?
Yeah, cosigners are scared, and rightfully so. If you can't qualify for a mortgage on your own, you're really asking a big favor of somebody else to vouch for you. So we usually want it to be a family member. You're less apt to rip off your mom and dad than you are some stranger on the street, right? The risk with being a cosigner is the risk of default. If that borrower doesn't make a mortgage payment, you're on the hook for that. We do put them on title, though, which gives them a little safety and security of knowing, hey, if my kid, leaves this house for the bank to sell, I can sell it first, and the bank doesn't have to take it over. So there are risks associated with it. Knock on wood, we haven't had any issues because we do our due diligence in making sure that, a cosigner's not being weighed so heavily on that application on their own.
Okay. And then when does the rest of the balance or the mortgage funds get paid?
You mean like on closing?
Yes. I had to reread the question. So the mortgage funds, they get paid on closing.
Yeah, the day of closing, usually around 2 p.m., 3 p.m., right when people are starting to panic because the end of the day is coming and they're sitting in the driveway with the U-Haul.
And we're all getting 500 phone calls and text messages.
That's when we call it, say, the money has been released,
Now, unless it's 5 o'clock and the funds haven't come in yet.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, that is scary.
Yeah. Sometimes it's right down to the wire, no pun intended.
That is why you
wire
never
transfer.
Do it on a Friday.
Never do it on a Friday.
And I don't like Mondays either because they're busy.
Yeah.
Right? So
closing dates Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Yeah, highly recommend.
People.
Absolutely.
Well, unless you're not moving in right away.
Yeah,
right? Because that's when it's a hassle. Is when you have to be in that same day.
Yeah.
Right? And the next day, Saturday. Well, you'll find us on a Saturday, but it's not
No
us you
lawyer.
need. It's a lawyer you need.
Exactly.
Okay, let's chat about land transfer tax.
Ooh.
Tell us about it and how it's calculated.
Well, that's a tough question. So land transfer tax is a tax that's charged to buyers. If you or I, who have already owned property, purchase a home, we would have to pay full land transfer tax. First-time home buyers, however, are exempt up to $4,000. So that's really, really nice. Land transfer tax is calculated in such a complex way. I won't even go through it.
Stages.
It's like
it is.
It's a big, huge flow chart. So like the first 50,000 is like 0.5%, and then this point, It's insane, though.
Yeah.
If you bought a home for about $400,000, you could expect to have land transfer tax about $4,500. So I kind of can figure it out quickly in my brain of where it's going to be, but we have a calculator for that.
There's land transfer tax calculators online.
All over the place.
Easy.
Yeah, and we include that in our calculations for people who are selling and buying another property.
Yeah.
When they say, oh, what can we be pre-approved for? I'm automatically figuring out what that land transfer tax is, what the legal fees are, because my net calculations are going to be different than what that homeowner's calculations are going to be.
So it's paid on closing?
It is paid on closing. The lawyer
and the lawyer handles all that.
They handle that.
So are there any other rebates for first-time home buyers, like land transfer tax? That's great. Anything else?
Not really, to be honest with you. I mean, $4,000 is a big chunk of change that, gives them some sort of incentive to purchase a home. First-time home buyers are also allowed to have an extended amortization of 30 years, which helps them keep their payments nice and low, gets them into the market, feel a little bit comfortable, which is really nice. And that's just actually a recent change that happened in December of last year. But not a lot else is really out there for first-time buyers right now.
Cassandra, now back to that cosigner and a first-time home buyer. How does that work with the rebate?
You can still get it.
The full 4%?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, because what the lawyer's going to do is register that cosigner as a non-assuming party without an invested interest. So an invested interest would be like a rental property. You're going in on it with somebody. A non-assuming party means they're not living there. That's not their primary home. They're merely there for usually income or credit support. So hence why we only register them to 1% ownership. So they still get 99% of that land transfer tax rebate.
Okay, so it depends how you go on title. So if you go on as, tenants in common.
Tenants in common, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's 50-50.
But always refer to your lawyer. I am not a lawyer. This is my disclaimer.
Yeah.
Seek independent legal advice about your options.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't sue me.
Okay, on to the next topic. Appraisals. What's the purpose of a home appraisal?
A home appraisal may be required in some circumstances should the lender choose that they want one. Usually we'll see a lender ask for an appraisal should there be questions about the property itself, into its condition, the shape it might be in, to make sure that it's up to snuff. Perhaps a private, you guys don't like those private purchase and sale agreements, got to take you out of it. How did that person come up with that value?
Yeah.
We need to make sure that the value is there. We saw a lot of appraisals back during COVID when people were offering hundreds of thousands of dollars over list price. The willingness to pay a price does not mean that's the property's value.
Exactly.
So we do see some circumstances where appraisals are required from the lender, and sometimes even CMHC wants to take a look at the property.
See, so when we're listing a property and it's maybe the seller wants more than we think is reasonable, I try to explain to them, if a bank appraiser comes in, they don't care that your visa bill is $20,000 and you want to cover all your costs of everything. They don't care about that.
Nope.
Real estate fees, that's not part of the value of the property.
But they all try to add it.
And that's what we try to instill, that if an appraiser comes in, they're going to probably back us up without even knowing us, because they use the same facts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or they have access to the same info. They have more access actually than we do. Okay, carry on.
Okay, so you said who orders it, or who requires it, and now who pays for it, the appraisal?
Yeah, so CMHC, if they want an appraisal, they cover that bill, which is fantastic. Appraisals in our area can be a substantial cost. We're seeing appraisal costs be anywhere from $550 to $1,000.
Oh, wow.
So it's a cost that we really don't want the borrower to have to pay. They're paying enough as it is already. So if the insurer wants an appraisal, they cover that. If the lender wants the appraisal, usually the responsibility goes back to the borrower. In most circumstances, I tell people, keep your invoice. I'll rebate you back on closing. I'll help you out with that cost. Some lenders do have a little bit of a rebate program themselves that they'll chip in about $300 after closing as well. So we do try to minimize those costs when an appraisal is required.
Okay. Now the big question, what happens if the home appraisal or the home appraises for less than the purchase price?
That's something we never want to see.
Yeah, I know.
So it does happen where the appraisal value comes in lower than what the purchase price is. Usually that buyer would go back to you, where you can go back to that seller and renegotiate, where you can say, look, the appraisal came in lower, it's just not worth it. However, not everybody is gracious in the way of saying, sure, we'll drop our sale price to you. And then the buyer, should they still want to purchase that home, will have to come up with the difference. The bank will only lend a maximum of 95% of the value of the home. But for instance, if somebody has 15% down payment and the value comes in less, they still have that buffer room and don't necessarily have to come up with more money. Their loan to value would just be increased accordingly.
Actually, I'm going to jump backwards for a minute. CMHC fees. So if you're over 20%, there's no CMHC
No
fees.
CMHC, yeah.
Okay, we didn't touch on that, I don't think. Okay, anyway, carry on.
I think it's your turn.
Is it?
It is.
Okay. Can a buyer use gift money as a down payment?
As long as it's a legitimate source of gifted funds and you're not robbing a bank or selling drugs, sure. A gifted down payment is supposed to be a non-repayable gift from an immediate family member. We need that family member to sign a gift letter that states that the funds are being used for the purchase of a home. I am a related family member, and they do not have to be repaid. Some lenders will call the person on that gift letter and verify the information, or even ask for their bank records to show proof that these funds are of a legitimate source and isn't money laundered.
Well, I guess in this day and age,
You have to be super careful. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. What's the one big mistake that buyers make when getting a mortgage?
I think the one big mistake that buyers make when getting a mortgage is finding the house first. It breaks my heart most circumstances it doesn't happen, but the rare ones where it does, where they say, oh, this is our dream home. We've already picked out paint colors.
Yeah.
We have furniture. We're ready. And I say, oh, I'm sorry, you don't qualify. And then
Yeah.
they're crying in front of me.
Yeah.
That is like the worst feeling.
Yeah.
So I think people, put that cart ahead of the horse.
They do.
A lot of times,
Yeah.
get all excited without doing their homework and getting pre-approved first.
And we don't want to dash their hopes either,
No.
but we don't want to show 25 houses. That's a lot of time. A lot
Yeah.
of, you get the seller's hopes up. The buyer already thinks they can afford this much.
Yeah.
We've invested a lot of time and energy and gas and so on. So it's disappointing for us too to find
Yeah.
out, oh my God, you're kidding me.
Well, and they're online looking at the mortgage calculators, trying to
Yeah.
figure out what their
Right,
payments are,
right.
but they're not considering that CMHC fee that's included. They're
Yeah.
not considering, any what the actual interest rates are in the day.
Yeah.
So I think when they find that home, they may find out, oh, that payment is not necessarily what we were hoping it would be, and
Yeah.
we can't afford that on their own personal budget.
Pre-approval.
Oh my gosh, I cannot say it enough. Always. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to get it tattooed on me.
We do.
That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
Get a shirt. Are you pre-approved?
Scan the barcode to apply now.
Okay.
That's awesome.
You, right? Me. That's me. Okay, fixed rate versus variable. What should people consider today?
Everybody's different. It is personal preference as to what people will want to pick. A fixed rate will lock you in. You know exactly what you're paying every
Yeah.
single month. You can budget yourself and just be safe in
Yeah.
knowing that those rates are not going to increase. If rates decrease, though, you're like, oh crap, I'm locked into this rate.
Yeah.
A variable interest rate will fluctuate up and down with whatever the Bank of Canada decides. And it usually goes up by a quarter point or down by a quarter point. In the last year, we've seen some historical things happen with the Bank of Canada, increasing bank prime in a drastic scale, and it's slowly coming down now. Not a lot of people like variable rates because you never really can budget yourself accordingly or plan ahead should that rate increase by 2%.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference.
is.
But on the other hand, there are other people who are saying, oh, I have lots of cash flow.
Yeah.
I'd like to take advantage of that variable rate because when it's low, it is
Super low.
great.
Yeah.
When it's high, it sucks. If you take a look at the last 25 to 30 years as to what the fixed rates have done and what variable rates have done, variable has come out on top by saving people more at the end. So
Is it a huge or is it?
it's pretty marginal,
Yeah.
but enough to,
Right.
if you're super financially savvy,
Right.
to know that that's going to benefit you. So, it can put you in a better position when it's nice and low. In today's day and age, a lot of people are taking fixed rates. They're uncertain as to what's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah.
We're very new into our new government. We're very new into dealing with what's going on in the United States. And that does affect how our interest rates
Yeah.
play out. So it's a time of uncertainty when it comes to what's going to happen down the line
Yeah.
over the next year. It's going to be interesting and maybe perhaps terrifying to see what's going on.
Terrifying.
Terrifying. I know. I was like, on that. So I think a lot of people are taking the fixed rates just so they know, okay, this is
Right.
what I'm going to be paying for the next 3 to 5 years. If shit hits the fan in the United States and affects us, I'm good still.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm just going to jump
Yes.
in. Is there any more talk of mortgage rate reductions?
no. So it had been forecasted
Yes.
that bank prime was going to continually come down slowly but surely. There was an announcement recently where the Bank of Canada said, look, I think people need to prepare for the idea of maintaining the Bank of Canada's interest rate for the remainder of the year.
is this because of?
Yeah,
The
it is
tariffs and all
because of
that?
that. Yeah. So we won't know what
Yeah.
happens over the course of the next couple of months to see if
Yeah.
there's going to be some negotiations when it comes to the tariffs. Will that help things? I certainly hope so.
Do you know what the 3-year or the 5-year fixed is like today or yesterday?
That's my favorite question, honestly. I get it like 20 times a day. What's your best rate today? Well, how much is a yellow car? Do you want a Beetle? Do you want a Ferrari?
Right.
Both do the same thing. They both have the same function, but you're going to pay a little bit more for those bells, whistles, and extra features that you so want.
Yeah.
So the fixed rates will vary depending on, are you CMHC insured? Do you have 20% down?
Yeah.
What type of property are you
Not an
buying?
easy
So
question to
it's
answer.
it's not a really simple cut answer. I wouldn't be doing my job appropriately if I just told somebody, oh yeah, here's your rate today without doing a full application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can tell you it's probably around 4%. With all
that's
that
what I've
being
been telling people too. So, okay, now I know the answer to this one, because if someone is declined by a bank, can a mortgage broker
Swoop in and save the
maybe
day?
swoop in and save
Yes,
the
they
day?
can.
Yes, they
Yeah.
can, because
Yeah,
I've seen you do
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, because of all those different little
Yeah.
bubbles that we have.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to like put down the banks. We
No.
need our
Yeah.
lender partners in town. We need somewhere to do your day-to-day
Yeah.
banking.
Yeah.
But sometimes they're not trained or have enough education or even history to know how to properly structure a client's application. Is asking appropriate questions. You know, can you pay off a credit card to qualify? Do you have overtime income? Do you have a co-signer? I've had referrals from banks in town. I hope none of the banks are watching me right now. I've had referrals from banks in town. They said, we can't approve them. Can you help? Do you have a co-signer? Yep. Thanks. Like, ask the questions. So if somebody's declined by their bank, absolutely, we'll be more than happy to take a look into it. Sometimes it's a simple little fix that can make that dream come true.
Yeah, and we don't deter people from using their bank.
No,
If they're
No.
happy
Go for
and
it.
they're
Go to your
comfortable
bank.
with their bank.
Yeah.
I find a lot of times is if they're unsure, and I say, well, here's some name,
Yeah, exactly.
on.
Some people are married to their lender, and
Yeah.
if that's the relationship
And
they
that's
want to
okay.
have, then go for it and
Yeah.
call me when you're up for renewal and when you realize that there's a better option out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so in conclusion, do you have any advice for buyers in today's market?
Yeah, today's market, I
Sorry.
love first-time buyers. Like, they're my jam. I just love them to bits. And I think that a lot of first-time buyers have been waiting. They've been stuck in their
yes.
high-paying rental accommodations.
Yeah.
During COVID, nobody could move. They had no employment income. There was no properties to purchase. So we're starting to see a lot of first-time buyers coming back out of the woodwork
Yeah.
now that rates are reasonable and property values have come down a little bit. And I just want to encourage them not to give up.
Yeah.
Honestly, don't feel defeated. I never tell anybody no. I might say not today.
Right.
But what can we do to get you to that point?
Yeah.
If there's a will, there is a way, and never give up on home ownership.
Yeah.
Ever.
I still have first-time buyers from COVID.
Yeah.
And it would be so sad because they'd be so excited to say, I did what you said. I got pre-approved.
Yes.
I'm approved for
yeah.
$350. Well, during COVID, I'm like, okay, I hate to.
There's nothing
Let's
for
just
$350.
keep waiting, and
Yeah.
something will come along that you can afford. It was hard for them because they were you couldn't compete.
Yeah.
Then interest rates went up, so they got a double whammy.
They sure
got
did.
hit
They got
it
the
was-
short end of the
They
stick.
really, really did. And
Yeah.
parents were so frustrated too because they're seeing the disappointment, and the kids are still living at home.
Yeah, in the
They
basement.
want
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I still have first-time buyers from COVID
Yeah.
that I'm only now starting to do offers with because they can now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people who had been pre-approved a year or 2 or 3 years ago need to reevaluate things because life changes, your situation changes. So they might still have in their brain, oh, that was what the payment was going to be. And we have to buy a $500,000 house. You don't anymore. So let's dust off that file and revamp it and see where things are at now.
I think too, with first-time buyers, they may have to accept that you don't need to have the granite countertops. You don't need to have, a million years ago, when we bought our first house, you put up with the ugly shag carpet. You put up with certain things and you did what you could. It doesn't all have to be instant.
No, you can move later, upgrade down the road.
Or one room at a time,
Yeah.
or save your pennies and do the windows as you can afford.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm seeing is we're kind of getting back to that, back to basics a bit.
Yeah.
Because that's, maybe a little bit it's their only option, but it's more acceptable now
Yeah, for
than
sure.
it was before because, everything was the shiny bells and whistles.
Yeah, it's better than living in mom and dad's basement. Deal with that shag carpet.
Right, yeah.
So, Cassandra, what is the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
Oh, wow. I have a great support staff at our office here, the younger generations. I'm on Instagram. You can find me there. You can find me on Facebook. Literally just have to Google Cassandra Cassidy.
Yeah.
There's a dead girl in Arizona. That's not me. But then I think I might be on the top of the list now. I think she's phased out. But if you could Google Cassandra Cassidy, you'll find all the ways to find me. But you can call me at 519-507-4663, which is actually 507-HOME.
Perfect.
How fantastic is that?
I like that.
Yeah,
Great.
you're
Yeah.
great. So yeah, people can find me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
That was great.
It
Yeah.
was so informative.
Yeah, it
and
sure
now
was.
you know.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Awesome.